The winter break is finally over and it's time for a new episode of the Opening School.
We'll continue from where we last put off and analyze the Nimzo-Indian defense.
The Nimzo-Indian is achieved after d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to c3, and bishop to b4, and it's a very common defense used by black. We have previously seen what happens after the more common continuations such as e3 and queen to c2 among others.
So today we'll take a look at the somewhat less popular bishop to g5. With this last move, black pinned the white knight on c3, taking over the control over the e4 square. White can of course not be any worse and pins the black knight on f6 in turn, leaving the battle over the e4 square yet to be decided.
One of the advantages with this move is that it greatly limits black possibilities. In fact, c5 is the only acceptable line to follow, but it doesn't have to be played right away. In fact, black should begin with playing h6, pushing the white bishop back to h4 and forcing it to release the control over the c3 to h6 diagonal, cutting it off from the queen side.
Black shouldn't be afraid of a capture on f6, and for that matter, white shouldn't take on f6 to begin with. This since it would only lead to a position where the black queen would be positioned in a very good square to attack the center from, especially since black is about to play c5. After white's bishop to h4, black plays c5. White, not wanting to gain the upper hand in the fight for control in the center, advances with the d-pawn. Black can now choose between playing an aggressive or positional line, depending on which move black chooses. b5, bishop takes on c3 check, or d6.
b5 is obviously the aggressive line. Black attacks the foundation of the white center, the c4 pawn, but sacrifices a pawn in the process. To capture on b5 right away isn't white's best option. This since black can win the d5 pawn after playing g5. This should be followed by bishop to g3 and knight takes on d5.
Instead of this, white will reach a better position after first exchanging pawns on e6 and then capturing on b5. White is an entire pawn up, but for this, black has a pawn majority in the center and many open files which can be used in an offensive manner. This is a rather dangerous position, and both sides have to have good calculating skills as well as a feeling for dynamics in order to get the most out of this line.
Next option is to exchange on c3 directly, giving white double pawns on the c file. This is one of the positional lines, and after d6, e3 and e5, the games aim for the same pawn structure as in the Hübner variation.
The last choice is to play d6 directly. This is also a positional line, and it merges with the line which follows after bishop takes on c3 check, after e3, and an exchange on c3 and e5.
Neither white nor black have any immediately weaknesses, and there really are no tactical problems to worry about in difference to what we saw after b5. The game will be quite restricted and mainly concentrated on the king side. If you decide to play bishop to g5 as white, you have to be comfortable with playing both tactical and positional play, since it's really up to black to decide which line to pick. But the greatest advantage is that the limitation that sets on black, and even though there is much theory to learn in this line too, it's not that much compared to the other variations that we have come across so far in the Nimzo-Indian. With that, we will end this week's episode of the Opening School, and we'll of course be back again next week, so see you then.